I will show you how to take the radiator out and then cap the valves of the radiator. Let's get started. Step number 1. Go to your boiler and turn off the heating system for your radiators. If your radiator is still hot, wait for some time until it is cold enough. Every radiator will have 2 valves. One valve is with a thermostat and the other without. Step number 2 is to close the valves. This particular valve has got a plastic cap that you need to first remove by pulling it out. Just be aware that some valves have got a knob that you need to turn clockwise to close it. I use a pliers and I turn off the valve by rotating it in the clockwise direction. Make sure to count the number of turns that you make, because when you would need to put the radiator back, you will need to open this valve again by turning it to the anti-clockwise direction the same number of times. This one I have turned 3 full turns. The other valve is for regulating the temperature and is much easier to turn off. You can easily turn it off by rotating it clockwise direction towards the negative sign. If your valve has got a knob with markings, that's even easier, because then you can simply turn your knob until you get to the star sign. Star sign means your valve is now closed. Step number 3, we got to now drain the radiator. Make sure you got a container underneath the valve, so when you open it, the water would flow into that. Luckily, one of my valves have got a drain pipe, which makes it much easier to drain the radiator. But even if your valve doesn't have a drain pipe, you could still follow the next step, which would be the same for all the radiators for draining the radiator. So I use an adjustable wrench, tighten here and then turn it anti-clockwise direction to open the drain valve. As you can see, little bit of water starts flowing, but it's nowhere near to the amount that it needs to flow. And that's because there is still a lot of pressure inside the radiator. That's why you need to use a radiator bleed valve key and open the bleed valve and let the air to come into the radiator, and this way the pressure would reduce inside the radiator and the water from the drain valve will start coming out. Once your container is filled up, you can turn off this valve and then empty the water, bring back the container again and open the valve once more, and repeat this process until the whole radiator is completely drained. It might take some time, so be patient. Near to the end, water starts to come very slowly. But now I'm happy to loosen the nut of the valve. This nut requires a 30mm wrench. That's quite a big sized wrench. Actually, my other radiator requires a 24mm wrench to loosen the nut. And on the same radiator, the other valve requires a 30mm wrench. Or you could use an adjustable wrench. You also would need another tool for holding the valve while turning the nut. Otherwise, the whole thing would start rotating. You can try to use a vice grip like this one. So first, hold the valve with one hand and turn the wrench clockwise direction if you're looking towards the radiator. And if you would look from this direction, which is towards the valve, you need to rotate it anti-clockwise direction to loosen the nut. If you would look at the nut closer, you can see that it is tightened against the valve. So it is important to rotate the nut in the correct direction. And as I've shown you here, it depends from which side you're looking at the nut. For gripping the valve, you could also use a basin wrench like this one. So you got to rotate the basin wrench in the anti-clock and the 30mm wrench in the clockwise direction to loosen the nut. Once the nut is loosened, you can then use your hand hand to completely remove it. If your radiator didn't have a draining pipe, then once you loosen the valve nut, the water would start flowing, and then you would need to empty your radiator from here. So once again, put a container underneath this valve and let the radiator drain further more. By the way, I use this nice fantastic stool to sit on to make my work easier. So the next step is to repeat the same process but on the other valve. So using a vice grip or something similar, hold the valve and with the help of 30mm wrench, turn it in the anti-clockwise direction and the nut would become loose, and then you can use your hand to completely turn it towards the valve. Also have a container ready here. When you open the nut, the water still could come from this valve as well. These pipes are usually quite flexible, so you can just pull them out to disconnect them from the radiator. And now let's disconnect the other valve by just pulling it out after rotating the nut, and as you can see, now we have removed both the valves from the radiator. This is quite a long radiator, so you will need 2 people to lift it. So you need to completely lift it up so that it will come out from the brackets behind the radiator. When moving this radiator, just be careful, because if you would turn it a bit, there are still water inside the radiator that could come out. As you can see, these are the brackets that were holding the radiator. Now it's time to cap the valves, but not all valves have got the same size. To find the cap size, you need to first measure the opening's diameter. For that, you can use a ruler, but make sure the ruler is at the center of the hole. And now if you look at the measurement from the outside diameter, it is around 26mm. But if you would measure the inside diameter, it is around 22mm, which is a standard size cap. So to get the correct size, you need to measure the inside diameter of the hole. To make things even more confusing, I bought a cap of 3/4 of an inch female, which if you convert it to millimeters, it is 19mm. It means the sizes in inches are not exact inside hole diameter size. That's why 3/4 of an inch cap is same as 22mm cap. But you want to buy the cap before you open the radiator. So how can you know your cap size without measuring the inside diameter? For that, you can instead measure the nut width across flats size. For example, width across flats of 30mm nut will give you M20 nut size, and an M20 nut has an approximately outside diameter of 26.67mm. This pipe then would have an inside diameter of 22mm. Therefore, for a nut with a width across flat size of 30, that is when you use a 30mm wrench, you will need to buy a cap of 22mm or 3/4 of an inch. And if you have used a wrench of 24mm, similarly it will give you a nut size of M16, and M16 has an approximately outside diameter of 21.34mm, which give you an inside diameter of 15mm or a nominal size of half an inch. So for a 24mm wrench, you would need to buy a cap of 15mm or half an inch. The most common size is 15mm, but you could also find other sizes such as 10mm and 8mm. So it's important to measure the inside diameter of the pipe to find the correct cap size. As you can see at the back of this cap, there is a rubber seal. So simply turn over the end cap over this and turn it clockwise to seal the valve. You don't need to make it too tight. As you can see, I've just tightened it using my hand and it was enough. But if in your case you tighten it with your hand and you still see leaks, then you can use a wrench, but just be careful not to tighten it too tight. Otherwise, you could ruin the seal. It is very important to put the cap to seal the valve. As you can see in here, I opened the cap after few days and there were some water accumulated there. Don't forget to put back the plastic cap that we removed previously. And finally, don't forget to turn off the drain valve as well by using the adjustable wrench and then turning it in the clockwise direction. And we also need to repeat the same process for the other valve with the thermostat. Correct size female cap like the one I got in here. Simply put it on and turn it clockwise to seal the other valve too. And if there is any water left on the floor, just simply mop the floor to dry it. Now you need to go back to your boiler and check the pressure of your boiler. If the pressure is low, then you need to turn off your boiler, let it cool for 4 to 6 hours, and then repressurize your boiler to the optimum pressure. And once you achieve the right pressure, then you can turn back on the center heating system. If this video was helpful, please don't forget to subscribe to support my channel. Also, you could watch my other videos that you can see on the screen. Until next time, bye bye.